Hey guys, wanted to get the annoying part of the video out of the way first. First of all, you're going to love my outfit. You're going to love the way that I look in this video. My hat especially, very handsome. Other than that, the video that you're watching now, this is available on the online school. This is actually a sneak peek into it. If you'd like more videos like this, especially in the area or realm of wood carving, check the online school in the link below. Just starting to add some videos on stone carving as well, so yeah, enjoy that. There's only one, I should say, one video on stone carving, but 30 plus videos on all types of wood carving. So if you're into subtractive art forms, check out my online school. If you're interested in carving faces, I focus on that. So there you go, that's the boring part. Check it out. Bye. Welcome everyone to today's episode of Fundamentals of Wood Carving. We're going to switch it up a little bit today. Instead of the typical wood carving, right? We do a lot of cottonwood bark. We've done some cedar. We've done other materials, butternut, basswood, etc. Today we're going to venture into a harder material, a harder organic material known as alabaster stone. This is a piece of pink alabaster that I harvested up north in northern Alabaster, Michigan. This is a sedimentary rock. It is formed as a result of glacial till, which means that glaciers travel long distances during the Ice Age, and at the nose of those glaciers, sediment, rock is ground up, and basically a large iceberg stopped at Michigan and melted, and so we have a lot of abundant groundwater as a result. Kettles and lakes are formed by the melting of glaciers, and what's left behind from those front ends, the front end of those icebergs, rather, is this sedimentary rock. So yeah, pretty awesome. It's very soft, it's very carvable. I'm going to show you the tools. To start, I'm going to really be centered around this Dremel. Why is that, you ask? Well, because most of you listening will have a Dremel. It's nice to have. Cutsall makes a great carving tool. If you use my last name, Lacasse, you'll get a discount of some kind. I can't remember if it's 10 or 5% off, but you get a discount code in the link below. But this is a Cutsall burr. It has sharp pointies on it, and it cuts into the stone, right? These are made for wood, also useful in stone carving. So definitely pick some of these up. I'll be using a variety of different shapes. Mostly I'll be using this long tapered bit, like so. It's very nice to have. Another tool. I took a pair of jeans and cut the leg out, and I filled it with sand. So yeah, that's one way of doing it. Yeah, this is pretty much a standard way of securing the stone to keep it from vibrating off of your surface, your hard surface. So once you've filled your pant leg that's been stitched up on either side with sand, you can set your rock on top of that, and that sand will absorb a lot of the blow of your tools, your chisels. Now, a couple of auxiliary tools. You can also use a chisel. This is a small chisel, probably about a 1/4 inch chisel. You use a mallet and a chisel to remove material in small chunks. Now, stone does behave a lot differently than wood. It's kind of the opposite of wood, where you start with a smaller tool to remove more material. That helps to fracture off larger bits. So I would actually, believe it or not, start with a small tool like this, or a smaller tool, even a pick, to remove bulk material. That being said, the other tool I'll use is a pneumatic hammering tool. Now this just speeds things up. You don't have to have this expensive piece of equipment, but it is nice to have. It's made by Barre, B-A-R-R-E. You can tell I haven't been as diligent as I should at keeping the surface oiled, but you can stick the handle in the pneumatic hammering device and air power through the material. It's a lot quicker. I will use it a bit, but I will also demonstrate hand chiseling, which I think if you're starting out in stone carving is a superior way of going about carving, because it offers you a little bit more control and it slows the pace down a little bit. That being said, you can order alabaster online from sculpture warehouses. It's a little pricey. Start with a nice piece of white alabaster, pink, blue alabaster. This is gypsum alabaster. There's also, I believe it's called calcite alabaster. A little bit of a different crystalline structure. It's harder. Gypsum alabaster is a little messier, but it's really soft and so easy to work. So let's get into it. I'm gonna wear some protection before I move on here. I'm gonna use some a 3M full face mask. This is a 6001, and it's a vapor. It's actually capable of getting rid of fine particulate and even vapors. So I want to wear a nice mask. The dust is really bad to breathe in. You need to wear some sort of protection when you're carving in this stone. So there you go. All right, one tool I should mention before we get into the carving. It's basically a Dremel with a a quarter inch shaft. Just a die grinder, a cheap central pneumatic die grinder from Harbor Freight, and I have a 1/4 inch shaft cut saw burr extreme at the tip, and that I'm going to use at the very beginning to do any sort of large scale cleaning and clearing. All right. All right, so I'm going to be doing carving a hibiscus. So I'm going to start by drawing out the outline, and then carve similarly to wood. I'm going to go remove the background, and then start to add depth around the stamen. Right, so I've got that long tapered bit, and that's that extreme heavy cutting, so it's a very rough bit. You want to remove a lot of material quickly. So I'm going in with about a 1/4 inch of depth. This is a thin rock, so I'm not going to have a lot of room to go far in. So I might go a total of about a 1/2 inch around the outline. And then I'm going to reduce the background area, everything that isn't the flower. So you can see that it's pretty easy to control the material once you have your boundaries defined. I'm going to move to the pneumatic chisel in just a couple of minutes, but I wanted to demonstrate what it looks like and how simple it is to use the hand carving method. Alright, so we had a pretty substantial chip out. It's pretty normal to have a chip out like this, in which case you need to work around the flake. So if something breaks off, you're just going to reduce the depth or bring the whole petal down. Alright, I'm going to introduce the use of a die grinder with the same flame tip. So it's a semi-round tip with a pointed point at the tip. So it's called a flame bit. This is also an extreme. And I've got this again on just a very basic, cheap angle die grinder. Okay? I'm going to use that to remove bulk material. All right, so a mistake that people often make when they're carving petals is they make them too flat. It's important that you have some movement, right? Even just taking a burr and running perpendicular to the length of the leaf and cutting a deep groove will give the piece some fold, some dimension, just like I did here. You see this large hump? We want that sort of dimension because in nature, nothing is perfect, right? Very rarely is something perfect and perfectly symmetrical. Flowers are fairly symmetrical, but the petals will have life to them, and so you want to give them that life. Your automatic tendency is going to be to smooth them too much. So I'm going to continue to use that flame tip burr to bring this backdrop further back and also create some grooves that run parallel to the length of the leaf. I'm going to do 3 of them, right, at the very base, add a little bit more depth surrounding the stamen, and the stamen, and then I'm going to go in and use the texture of this burr. You can see these lines. I'm going to use that to create the fine lines that exist on the petal of the hibiscus. So I'm going to use the tool to my advantage.
Alabaster, everybody.
It's just I'm out of practice. So it's important that you prune your tomatoes. If you don't prune your tomatoes, the plant itself will grow green, but the tomatoes won't get ripe and full and voluptuous, right? So I'm going to use this special trimming tool. All right, you remember one of the first rules of design is that your eye always tends toward the outside of an object, right? And in this case, we want the outline or the outside of this petal to have movement across the edges as well. So you're going to see me take the flame tip bit and start to create some undulation of the edge, right? I'll also use my smaller bit to start separating the petals and separate the stamen or stamen from the petals, as well as using the tool to start to undercut the leaves or the petals from the background. right, I'm going to use this small tapered bit, this kind of straight bit. It's actually kind of a mix between a taper and a straight shaft. That to come underneath the petals and undercut them to make them appear to float off the surface, right? What we're trying to do is make this very hard material seem very delicate and soft like the petal of a flower. Okay? Okay. Good. Notice that I'm following the line of the turn, right? So if I come down here and up, I want to make sure that my tool comes up with this rise and then down with this valley here and here. Alright, so I've got my flex shaft with a carbide cutting head to create variation in the texture. Now, another element of design is we want to create variation in texture and surface. So I'm going to use this much finer cutting tool to create a soft surface as the background. I'm actually going to let the petal be a little bit rougher, which is a little bit counterintuitive, but you'll see what it looks like in a bit. Alright, so I came far in with that flame tip cutting head. This is that smooth cutting carbide tip, and I really use the point of that to get a deep undercut and come all the way around. Now I am meeting at the junction point with, and coming underneath that with a considerable amount of depth between the meeting point of these two petals. You can see that. There's quite a bit of depth down in there. And the same thing here. And here. Next I'm going to use that same flame tip bit and then followed by a smaller flame tip to separate the petals where they overlap. Alright, now I'm going to sculpt the stamen, or the stamen. I'm really not sure how to say it, so I say it both ways. But the stamen is actually pretty difficult to capture in reality from the hibiscus because it's very long and there are offshoots that are very thin with thin stems. So I'm going to create an illusion of that kind of thinness without actually having to create that much fragility. So I'm going to start to detail, starting with my little sharp carbide cutting head, my flame tip. I'm going to start making small circles and then create a narrow shaft that leads up to those circles. All right, so I'm going to finish really tightening up the details on the stamen or stamen, and then I'm going to go in with my more aggressive, extreme carbide cutting head cut saw tool, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to finish creating texture where I bummed it up, where I messed it up. So I want to create consecutive lines that run parallel to each other. So I'm going to be using the natural grate or rake of the tool to create that texture. One thing I neglected to mention, I want to use a little bit of sandpaper, some 120 grit, to smooth the edges of the petals. I'm just going to take a light touch and with the sandpaper just to smooth that out, and then apply the texture. All right, so we're done with the carving part, and now's the fun part, finishing. I like to use mineral oil. There are other types of stone finishes. You can actually use a similar stone finish to that of a marble sealer. I've used that before. That hardens. It's a pretty good sealer. But honestly, I prefer the mineral oil. And then I'm just going to use some pretty basic white synthetic artist brushes to try and apply the oil to the flower. I'm actually going to leave the background matte. By that I mean I won't be applying any of the oil to the background at all. So I'm going to do my best to create a contrast not only in texture, but also in value by applying the oil to parts and not to others. So kind of a fun thing you can do. Now it'll look a little glossy at first, but once the oil soaks in to the stone, you say soaks in and say, well, it's stone, how is it supposed to soak in? Well, the material is porous and it will absorb the liquid, the oil. So once it absorbs that oil, it will appear matte, and that is much better looking than shiny. So it's another reason I like to use the oil. Is because you can apply a bit and then wipe off excess and it leaves sort of a subtle matte finish behind. Whereas the product I was using for floors was a little bit too shiny, and so I do prefer just a light touch of mineral oil. If you do end up applying mineral oil and it gets in the background, you can carve that away once it dries, and so leave that kind of a matte finish. So don't worry too much about getting any on the background. So I'm going to let this soak in, and just wanted to say thank you for watching. I hope that you learned something. I hope that you'll give it a shot. It's very much like wood, just another reductive art form. Stone carving is just an awesome pastime and something worth getting into. The pieces, people love to buy stone sculpture, so if you're interested in selling artwork, it's a huge advantage to have a diversity in the type of materials that you sculpt in. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Coming at you live from the fundamentals of wood carving porch. Not really live.